They give you a strange amount of advice on your way out of the only home you have ever had. Walk west. Keep to the roads. Do not stop in the king's country. As if I had a say in any direction. As if west were a mercy and not simply the way the gate happened to face when they put me through it. I walked until the road stopped being a road and started being a suggestion. I walked past the last marker stone of Stonewater Land and into country that belonged to no one I knew, and somewhere in the third day, in the long desolate stretch where the grass goes silver and the wind has opinions, my body decided it had carried me far enough and set me down in the ditch like a thing it was finished with. I was 23, a woman grown by any Pax law, and I had been an Omega my whole life, which is to say I had spent it being the last to eat and the first to be blamed, and I had borne it, because bearing things was the one skill an Omega was permitted. I had not expected to bear being cast out. There is a difference between being low and being gone. And no one tells you what the second one does to your knees. So I lay in the ditch at the edge of the world, and I watched a beetle climb a stalk of grass with more purpose than I had left in me, and I thought, with the flat clarity of someone who has run out of feelings to feel, well, this is a foolish place to die. There is not even anyone here to be inconvenienced by it. That was when I heard the horns. I want to be honest about what I felt, because I have told this part many times since, and people always expect the wrong thing. I did not feel hope. Hope is for people who still have somewhere to be. What I felt, hearing a royal procession come up the road, the horns, the iron-shod hooves, the particular weight of many people who matter all moving together, was a small, tired wish that they would have the decency to pass quickly and not make me watch. They were beautiful, I will give them that. Banners the colour of old blood, riders in grey and silver, horses that had never once been hungry, and out ahead of all of it, loping easy at the head of the column, the way a flag goes ahead of an army, an enormous wolf, black going to grey at the muzzle. The kind of creature that makes the back of your neck remember what your kind used to be afraid of. I expected him to pass. They were all going to pass. I was a grey heap in a grey ditch, and I had stopped being visible to the world the moment my own alpha turned his back. The wolf stopped. He stopped the way a held breath stops, completely, between one stride and the next, and he turned his great head, and he looked across the desolate ground straight at me, and then he left the road. He left the road, and the column behind him faltered, and a horn that had been sounding cut off mid-note, and the whole shining river of them stumbled to a halt, because the thing at its head had simply walked away from the entire kingdom to cross a ditch toward a dying Omega, and lay down in the wet grass at my side, and put his head against my shoulder, and refused, with his whole vast unmovable body, to go anywhere ever again. I did not understand it. I want that on the record, because everyone who came after understood it instantly and looked at me as though I were slow. But I had spent my life being chosen last or not at all, and the language of being chosen first was not one I had ever been taught, and so I lay there with the great weight of a king's wolf settled along my side, and I thought only, he is warm. And then, because I was who I was even at the bottom, I hope I do not get blamed for this. Up on the road, men were shouting. A woman's voice, high and sharp, was demanding to know what had happened to the procession. And then all the shouting stopped at once, the way noise stops when the person it is afraid of arrives, and I heard boots in the grass, unhurried, and I turned my head, and I saw him for the first time. The Alpha King. I will not pretend I read him correctly. I read him as cold, tall, dark, still in a way that the still air around him seemed to copy, with grey at his temples too young for his face and eyes that had decided, some time ago, to want nothing. He looked at his wolf lying in the dirt beside a stranger. He looked at me. And something crossed his face so fast I would spend weeks deciding whether I had imagined it. Not surprise. Not anger. Something closer to the look a man gives a door he had nailed shut, finding it open. "Move," he told the wolf. His voice was low and used to being obeyed. The wolf did not move. I learned a great deal about the king in that moment, though I did not know it yet. I learned that he asked his own wolf to leave me as if it were a soldier. I learned that the wolf, for the first time in anyone's memory, told its king no. And I learned, from the silence of 40 people who served him, that no one there had ever seen such a thing and lived to gossip about it before. "He stopped the convoy," I offered, helpfully, from the ditch. "I think your wolf is broken. You should have that looked at." The king of the Iron Territories looked down at me, a heap of exiled nothing with grass in my hair and a dead woman's wind in my ears, and for one moment the cold thing in his face cracked, and underneath it was something so raw and so unguarded that I looked away on instinct, the way you look away from a wound that is none of your business. "No," he said quietly. "I don't think I will. They could not leave me." That was the shape of it, and everyone hated the shape. His wolf would not go without me, and a king cannot be parted from his wolf, and so I, who had nothing, became the thing the entire procession had to solve. They wrapped me in a fur that probably cost more than my whole life, and put me in a wagon, and the wolf walked beside the wagon the entire way, his shoulder against the boards, and the king rode ahead and did not look back, and I understood that I had become a problem with a roof over it, which was still a great deal more than I had owned that morning. I want to be clear that I was given a choice. The second in command saw to that, a broad, weathered man named Einar, with a soldier's scars and a grandfather's patience, who crouched by the wagon at the first halt and told me plainly that I was free to be set down at the next village with coin enough to start again, and that no one would force me a step toward the keep if I did not wish it. I thought about it. I was good at being nothing. I had references. The village would have been the sensible road. "Will the wolf follow me to the village?" I asked, "or will he follow the wagon?" Einar's mouth did something complicated. "The wolf," he said, "will follow you, mistress. That is the trouble." "Then I had better stay near the king," I said, "or I will have stolen the realm its wolf, and an Omega does not survive that twice in one life." I meant it as the dry joke it was. Einar did not laugh. He looked at me a long moment, the way you look at a card that has been played in a game you thought you understood, and then he stood and told the driver to carry on. So I chose the keep. I want that remembered, in everything that came after. No one carried me into that life. I walked into it on my own broken knees, for the worst of reasons, which was a warm animal who would not leave me, and it remains the best decision I have ever made. The keep was a mountain pretending to be a building. Black stone, banners, a great hall built to make a person feel like a coin dropped down a well. They gave me a room, a real room, with a real bed, the first door in my life that locked from my side, and they gave me plain grey clothes and work in the still room grinding herbs, because even a king's broken wolf cannot make the household feed an idle mouth, and that suited me. I knew how to be useful, I did not know how to be wanted, and I was not foolish enough to think that was what this was. It was at my first meal in the great hall that I noticed the chair. The high table sat above the rest on a dais, and at the king's right hand was a place laid as carefully as his own, a setting, a cup, a folded cloth, and no one sat in it. No one went near it. A serving boy reached to clear the untouched plate at the end of the meal, and a woman's hand closed on his wrist before he could, and the boy went white, and the plate stayed. The hand belonged to Lady Corva. She was the most elegant grief I have ever seen worn as a garment, tall, silver-fair, beautiful in the way of cold mornings, and she moved through that hall as though she owned the air in it, because in every way that mattered she did. She had run the king's household for 3 years, since his Luna died, and she did it with the devotion of a woman tending a grave, and the place at his right hand was the grave. I learned all of this in whispers, the only currency an Omega is ever given freely. Whose place is that? I asked the girl beside me in the still room the next morning, because I have never in my life learned to leave a closed door alone. She did not look up from her grinding. "We don't ask," she said. "Lady Corva keeps it set. We don't ask. So of course I could think of nothing else. I should tell you that the king avoided me. He did it well, the way a man does a thing he has practiced. For my first weeks in the keep, I saw him only at a distance, at the head of the hall, on the training ground, a dark figure who governed a kingdom with the flat competence of someone going through correct motions. He never came to the still room. He never sent for me. His wolf had no such restraint. The wolf came most evenings, padding into the still room while I worked, lying down across the doorway so that I had to step over him to leave, putting his great head in my lap with a sigh that rattled the bottles on the shelf. I talked to him the way you talk to something that cannot answer, which is to say honestly. I told him about Stonewater, about being the last to eat, about the morning they put me through the gate with no charge spoken and no reason given, just my own alpha not meeting my eyes and a strange haste in it, men I had known my whole life suddenly unable to look at me, as if I had become a thing it was dangerous to have seen. I still don't know what I did, I told the wolf, grinding dried yarrow to dust. That is the part that keeps me up. You can survive being punished. It is being punished for nothing that rots you. The wolf lifted his head and looked at me with an attention no animal should have, and I scratched his ears and felt foolish, and did not yet understand that I had just told the truest thing in the realm to the one creature that already knew it was not nothing at all. The man came only once in those weeks, and he did not mean to. I had stayed late, and I crossed the dark hall to take a shortcut to my room, and he was there, alone, sitting at the high table in the unlit dark, with the empty place beside him and a single candle burning in front of it. Not in front of his own seat. In front of hers. He did not hear me at first. I saw his face before he arranged it. I saw a man keeping a vigil he had told no one about, and I understood, wrongly, as it turned out, but I understood something, that whatever this was, it was not over for him. The dead are supposed to be buried. This one was being kept. He felt me there, and the face went away, sealed shut like a letter. You should be asleep, he said. So should you, I said, before I could stop myself, because that is my great failing, the truth coming out the wrong door. Forgive me, I forget who I am talking to. He looked at me across the dark, the candlelight between us, and he did not send me away. No, he said slowly. I think you don't. I have wondered since whether that was the moment. For him, I mean. I cannot speak for his wolf, which had decided in a ditch. But I think the man, the careful, sealed man, began to come undone the first time someone in his own hall told him to go to bed as though he were a person and not a throne. He had been a monument for 3 years. I did not know how to treat a monument. It is, I think, the only thing I have ever offered anyone that they could not get elsewhere. If you are still with me, and I hope you are, because this is the part where it stops being a sad story and starts being a dangerous one, I would love to know where you are listening from tonight, and whether you have ever been somewhere you were sure you did not belong, only to find the one creature in the room that disagreed. Tell me, after, and if this has its hooks in you, follow along. The door, as someone once taught me, is worth leaving open. The next morning, Lady Corva sent for me, and the dangerous part began. She received me in a solar full of her dead sister's things. I understood that only later. At the time, it was simply a beautiful cold room with a beautiful cold woman in it, and a window that looked down over the whole keep like an eye. She was gracious. That was the worst of it. She told me she understood my position was not my doing, that no one blamed a stray for the strange behaviour of the king's wolf, that she felt only sympathy for a girl so far from home. And then, in the same warm voice, she explained that my presence was a kindness the household could not long afford, that tongues were wagging, that the king's dignity, so newly steadied after his great loss, could not survive becoming the subject of a kennel maid's romance. That she had found me a position with a noble family 2 valleys distant. A good place. A generous place, and that the wolf would forget me in a week, and the king in less, and was it not better for everyone, truly, if I went quietly before I was made to go in some way less kind? I have been spoken to by powerful people my whole life. I know the sound of a threat wearing perfume. His wolf followed me from a ditch, I said. If you can get it to forget me in a week, my lady, you should be advising the king yourself, and not merely setting his table. It was the table that did it. I saw it land. I had not even meant the empty place, I had meant her keeping of his household, but her face went still in a way that told me I had stepped on something buried, and she smiled, and it did not reach the cold morning of her eyes, and she said, very pleasantly, that she could see I would need to learn my place the hard way, as some did, and that she would pray it did not cost me. I went back to the still room and ground herbs until my hands ached and told myself I had won. I had not won. I had only made myself worth the trouble of removing. The first attempt came 3 days later, and it was clever, because it did not look like an attempt at all. A vial went missing from the still room, a strong one, a sleeping draught that became a poison at the wrong dose, and was found, by a search Lady Corver herself suggested out of concern for the household's safety, in my locked room, behind the loose stone I did not know was loose. An Omega, a stranger, with a stolen poison, in a keep that had already lost one Luna to a death no one liked to speak of. The conclusion arranged itself. I did not even have to be accused. I simply had to be looked at, by enough people, in the great hall, with the vial on the table between us, while Lady Corver grieved aloud for the danger I had brought beneath the king's roof. It nearly worked. I felt it nearly work. I felt the hall turn the way a tide turns, all that fear and grief finding a shape at last. And the shape was me, and I stood there with nothing. Again, with nothing, always with nothing, and understood that I was about to be put out of a second gate, and that this one would not open onto a road. And the king stood up. He came down off the dais, which I would later be told he had not done in that hall since the day they carried his Luna out of it, and he crossed to where I stood with the guards' shadows falling over me, and he turned to face his own court, and he put the vial in his own hand, and he looked at it, and then he looked at Lady Corver. A still-room vial, he said, behind a stone in a locked room, found by a search you proposed. He set it down. I have spent 3 years, my lady, being grateful for how well you tend my house. Tend it. Do not arrange it. The hall did not breathe. This woman did not steal that, he said, to all of them, any more than my wolf was bewitched into a ditch. My wolf does not make mistakes about people. It is the one part of me that never has. He looked at me then, and the whole court watched him do it, and there was that raw, unsealed thing in his face again, out in the open now, where it could be used against him, which for a man who had made an art of wanting nothing was the most reckless act in the world. She stays, he said. She stays at my pleasure, and under my protection, and the next hand that moves against her answers to me. Not to the law. Is that understood? It was not a question. They understood. It should have ended there. I keep saying that. In these stories of mine, and I have learned that the place where it should end, and the place where the knife actually is, are rarely the same place. Because I was watching Lady Corver's face when the king defended me, and I had been read wrongly my whole life by people who thought low meant stupid, and I had learned to read others very well in return. And what I saw in her was not a thwarted schemer. It was fear, specific fear. The fear of someone who has realized that the thing they were trying to throw out of the house had nearly seen what was hidden in it. That night I could not sleep, and I went back to the dark hall, to the empty place, because I have never once in my life been able to leave a closed door alone. The candle was there, and this time, beside it, the king. You did not have to do that, I said. I did, he said. He did not look up from the small flame. I have let one woman be taken out of this hall on a lie I was too slow to stop. I will not do it twice. And there it was, the door swinging open. I sat down, not in the empty place, I was not a fool, but on the step below the dais, and I asked him the question I had been swallowing for weeks. What really happened to her? He was quiet so long I thought he would not answer. Then he told me, in short, hard sentences, like a man paying out coin he could not spare. He told me that his Luna, Linnea, had died 3 years before of a wasting sickness that came on her in a single season, that the physicians had named it, and the pack had mourned it, and the realm had moved on, and that he had never, not for one day, believed it. that a healthy young wolf does not wither in a season for no cause, that he had spent 3 years quietly gathering what he could, symptoms, dates, the names of who had brought her food and drink in her last weeks, and had found nothing he could prove and could not make himself stop. That the empty place was not a shrine, it was an open question he could not close. "Everyone thinks I keep it out of love," he said, and the candle shook with his breath. "I keep it because I failed her. Because someone in my own house, I think, did this, and I have never been able to prove it, and until I do, I will not let her plate be cleared as if she simply finished her meal and left." I felt the cold come up through the stone into my bones, but it was not the stone. It was the shape of a thing arriving, because he had said symptoms and dates and a wasting that came on in a season, and far away in the bottom of my memory, in the last cruel weeks before Stonewater put me through the gate, a thing I had seen and not understood turned over and showed me its other side. I had been a still-room girl at Stonewater too. That is the part no one in this keep knew. Because no one had asked the Omega anything. And in my last months there, my alpha, Garrick, a hard man who had always frightened me, had received a visitor. A fine grey cloaked rider who came in the dark and left before dawn, 3 times across one winter, and who paid Garrick in coin and in something better than coin, which was the promise of an alliance with the king's house once a certain obstacle was passed. I had carried the wine in. I had heard a name spoken that meant nothing to me then, the king's lady, the king's lady, the king's lady, and I had heard the words, a clean sickness, nothing the physicians will question, and I had thought it was politics. The way the kennel maid thinks the master's business is weather, and I had forgotten it, because forgetting was safer than the alternative. Until they put me out. With no charge. In a strange haste. My alpha not meeting my eyes. Not because I had done anything, because I had carried the wine. Because I was the one who had seen the grey rider's face in the lamplight, 3 winters running, and a witness with nothing left to lose is the only kind of witness that frightens a careful person. Garrick had not cast out an Omega. He had buried a mouth. And he had done it in a hurry because, somewhere, someone had grown afraid of what that mouth might say. I knew the grey rider's face. I had been seeing it for weeks in this keep, gracious and cold, keeping a dead woman's plate set with her own hand so that no one else would ever clear it and find what a careful person leaves behind when they think no one low enough to matter is watching. "Roderick," I said, his name, the first time, and I did not even notice I had used it. The plate. The cup. Has it been the same cup all 3 years? The one she drank from? He went very still. "Corva insists on it," he said. "No one else is to touch it." She says, he stopped. I watched him arrive where I had already arrived. I watched 3 years of grief turn in one breath into something with a blade in it. She says it is sacred to her sister. "It is the one thing she cannot let anyone examine," I said. Because if there is anything left in the glaze of it, in the metal of it, any trace at all of what was given to your Luna, then the most careful person in this house has kept the proof of her own crime on your table for 3 years, in plain sight, daring anyone low enough to be ignored to notice. My voice did the thing I had not given it leave to do. I made it stop. "I noticed," I said. "I am very low. It is the one advantage of it." He was on his feet. And so was the danger, because a careful person who is afraid does not wait to be exposed. Lady Corva moved that same night. I will give her this. She did not panic. She did the careful thing. She came for the cup. Ina caught her in the dark hall with it already in her hands, wrapped in cloth, on her way to wherever careful people make such things disappear. And there was a struggle that an old soldier should have won easily, except that she had brought a blade, and he had brought only his hands, and I came into the hall to the sound of it, Ina down on one knee with his arm opened and bleeding, and Corva with the cloth-wrapped cup in one hand and the knife in the other. And 3 years of perfect grace finally showing me the face I had carried out of Stonewater in the lamplight. "You should have gone to the village," she said. She was not even angry. That was the most frightening thing about her, to the very end. I gave you a road. I always give them a road first. She did not give me one this time. She came at me with the blade, fast, to silence the last mouth between her and 3 more years of perfect grace, and I did the only thing a still-room girl with nothing can do, which is to put myself between the knife and the thing that mattered. And the thing that mattered was the cup, the proof, the dead woman's name. I got a hand on the cloth and held on, and the blade came down, and a line of cold opened across my forearm, bright and clean, and I felt my own blood come hot over the cold, and I did not let go. I had spent my life letting go of everything. I held on to that. The wolf hit her like a thrown door. He came out of the dark with the king a half step behind him in the shape of a man, and Corva went down under 300 pounds of the one creature in the world that had never once been wrong about people, and the cup rolled free across the flagstones and did not break, and I sat down hard against the dais with my arm open to the bone and the proof safe in my bleeding lap, and I started, helplessly, to laugh. "Your wolf," I told the king, who had dropped to his knees in front of me with his hands hovering over the wound as if he had forgotten how to touch anything, "is not broken after all. I take it back." They examined the cup. Of course they did. The king's own physicians, and then a healer from a rival pack brought in so that no one could cry favour, and there was a residue in the old glaze. Faint after 3 years, but there. A thing that does not occur in wine, and does occur in the still room of a careful poisoner, and it matched, to the trained nose, a compound that wastes a body slowly and reads, to the untrained one, as a clean sickness, nothing the physicians will question. I gave my testimony with my arm bound in a sling and my voice not entirely steady. I told them about Stonewater, about the wine I had carried, about the Grey Rider who came 3 winters running, and the name I had heard, and the alliance that was promised once a certain obstacle was passed. I told them I had been put out of my gate, not for any sin, but because I had a face that had seen a face. And then I named the face, in the king's great hall, in front of the whole court that had so recently been ready to put me out of a second gate, and I watched the realm understand, all at once, that the cast-out Omega with nothing had walked in carrying the one thing the king had been unable to find for 3 years, and that the gracious lady tending the grave had dug it. Garrick of Stonewater was sent for in chains within the month. Lady Corva did not survive long enough to be sent anywhere. A pack does not show mercy to the murderer of its Luna, and the king did not ask it to, and I found I had no grief to spare for the woman who had emptied that chair and then kept it set as a trophy for 3 years. Some things do not deserve my softness, and I have stopped apologising for knowing which. That was the turn none of us saw, though all of us should have. We had all been looking at the stray in the ditch and asking what she had done to deserve it. No one had thought to ask whether she had done anything at all, whether the lowest thing in the room had been thrown away precisely because she was the only one who had seen. I had arrived with nothing. It turned out nothing was the most dangerous thing in the realm, if you knew how to read it. I have stopped, since, trusting the word. There is no such thing as a person with nothing. There is only a person no one has bothered to ask. The kiss, when it came later, and I will keep the most of it, because some things are mine. I will tell you only that it was on the step below the dais where I had first told a king to go to bed, with the candle still burning beside the empty place, and that when it ended I understood for the first time what that flame had really been keeping lit, not a grave. A door. Held open 3 years for an answer, and the answer had walked in out of a ditch. He said my name like it was the verdict he had been waiting 3 years to read aloud. A year on, there is no empty place at the high table. The cup is buried with Linnea, where it should have been from the start, and her plate was cleared at last, not in forgetting but in the opposite of it, with the whole pack standing witness and her name spoken plainly, a wound finally allowed to close because the thing that had kept it open had been answered. Roderick walked through that and came out the other side a man instead of a monument, and I was the one steady in it, which is a strange thing for the lowest creature in a kingdom to be, and I have decided I do not mind being strange. I am the Luna of the Iron Territories now, which still makes me want to laugh at funerals and weep at feasts, an omega cast out of a ditch sitting at the head of a table she was once not allowed to ask about. They came to it slowly, the great wolves of this place. Some came to it because they feared him. More came to it, in the end, because of a simple thing they had all watched, that the king's wolf, which had never once been wrong, had crossed an entire kingdom to lie down beside me. And a pack will follow its wolves into truths its pride would never reach on its own. Einar healed crooked in the arm and complains about the weather in it and is the truest friend I have ever had. The chair beside the king is mine now, and on the rare nights he is gone from our rooms I know where to find him, down in the hall, at the table, sitting in the dark with the new candle that we keep lit for no grave at all. Only for the habit of leaving a light for whoever is still out there on the desolate road, sure they belong nowhere, not yet knowing that somewhere a wolf is already deciding otherwise. A letter came last week from Stonewater, from the pack that put me through its gate without a word, now leaderless and ashamed, asking, with enormous delicacy, whether the new Luna might find it in her heart to speak for them to the king, who held their alpha in chains. I had Einar write back that the Luna remembers exactly how it feels to be put out of a gate with nothing, and that she would not wish it on them, and that this was the whole of the mercy they would get from me, and that they should consider it generous. Because I had carried their wine, and I knew precisely what they were capable of forgetting. Then I went and found my wolf in the dark hall, and sat down beside him on the step, and he put his great head in my lap and sighed, and the candle burned, and I scratched his ears the way I had that first night in the still room when I thought he was broken and I was nothing, and neither of those things had ever been true. So tell me, did you believe it when they told you I had nothing? I almost did myself. And wherever you are tonight, on whatever desolate stretch of your own road, I hope you find the one in the room who disagrees. Light a candle in the comments. Tell me where you are listening from, and if this kept you company in the dark, stay. Follow along. There is a place at this table now, and I have learned, against everything they taught me, to keep it set for someone.